One of the oldest and most persistent perspectives in United States foreign policy is isolationism. Isolationism refers to the belief that the United States should prioritize its domestic political, economic, and social concerns over active engagement in global affairs. While isolationism does not necessarily imply complete disengagement from the world, it reflects a strong reluctance to participate in foreign alliances, military commitments, or international institutions that could entangle the nation in overseas conflicts. At its core, isolationism is rooted in the idea that national security and prosperity are best preserved by limiting foreign obligations and avoiding the political risks associated with international intervention. Intellectual and political foundations of isolationism draws on several enduring American political themes. Geographic security, provided by two oceans and relatively weak neighboring states, Republican caution, which views foreign entanglements as threats to self-government, economic self-sufficiency, emphasizing domestic production and internal development, moral skepticism, the belief that foreign conflicts are driven by interests unrelated to American values. Historically, isolationist arguments warned that overseas commitments would drain resources, provoke unnecessary wars, and undermine constitutional limits on executive power. Prioritization of domestic concerns. Isolationism emphasizes that the federal government's primary responsibility is to its own citizens, not to the management of global order. From this perspective, military spending abroad, foreign aid, and alliance obligations divert attention and resources away from domestic priorities such as economic stability, infrastructure, social welfare, and political reform. Isolationists argue that international engagement often benefits elites, defense contractors, multinational corporations, and political leaders, while imposing costs on ordinary citizens through taxation, conscription, or economic disruption. As a result, isolationism frames foreign intervention as a threat not only to peace, but to democratic accountability. Historical application, post-World War I. Isolationism. The clearest historical expression of U.S. isolationism occurred in the period following World War I. After the immense human and economic costs of the war, public opinion shifted sharply against international involvement. Many Americans concluded that entry into the conflict had been a mistake driven by European rivalries and economic interests rather than genuine national necessity. This sentiment manifested in several key ways: rejection of permanent military alliances, opposition to joining international organizations designed to manage global security, sharp reductions in military spending, legislative efforts to limit the president's ability to commit forces abroad. The prevailing belief was that disengagement from global politics would prevent future wars and allow the nation to focus on internal development and stability. Evaluation, the limits and failures of isolationism. Although isolationism was motivated by understandable concerns, it is widely regarded by scholars as largely unsuccessful as a long-term foreign policy strategy. First, isolationism failed to prevent the emergence of global threats. Economic interdependence, technological advances, and geopolitical rivalries continued to shape international affairs regardless of U.S. participation. The United States could not fully insulate itself from global instability, particularly as international trade and security became increasingly interconnected. Second, isolationism often delayed necessary engagement rather than eliminating it. By avoiding early diplomatic or collective security efforts, the United States found itself confronting larger, more dangerous conflicts later under less favorable conditions. Third, isolationism underestimated the extent to which American economic and security interests were already global. Industrial production, financial markets, and resource access tied the United States to international systems that could not be ignored without significant domestic consequences. Finally, isolationism created strategic vacuums. In the absence of U.S. leadership, other powers were able to reshape the international order in ways that ultimately threatened American interests and values. Isolationism in perspective. Isolationism occupies an important place in the history of U.S. foreign policy as a cautionary tradition rather than a sustainable doctrine. It reflects enduring anxieties about war, empire, and overreach, and it continues to resurface in debates over military intervention, foreign aid, and international institutions. However, the historical record suggests that complete or near-complete disengagement from global affairs is incompatible with the realities of modern international politics. As a result, subsequent U.S. foreign policy traditions, such as internationalism and containment, emerged in part as responses to the perceived failures of isolationism.